Thanks everyone for joining yet another week. Today we're going to have Dr. Jacob Raber from Oregon Health and Sciences University talk about his nice mouse model he has for COVID-19 to be used outside of the BSL-3 lab. But I'm going to first give a little quick 10-minute update on COVID news and papers that maybe people should pay attention to. And then I'm going to turn it over to Jacob to talk the rest of the time. So I'm just going to skip that, but just update, as you guys know, we're working on a couple of case reports that Al Salani's leading. So people are interested in joining that. There's some interesting case reports from patients dealing with long COVID that the patients have agreed to share the data with us, and hopefully we could see what's happening with them and then get some interesting publications out. If you're interested, reach out to me and Al, and then we can have you part of the group. So some COVID news, you might have seen this, and overall, the cases are going down everywhere, but they've been starting to see in the wastewater just around the New York City area, I should say, that there's been an increase in cases happening. This is New York has a nice wastewater tracking system that you can access here. But you can see, throughout New York State, everything's going down like the national trend. But once you zoom in the actual New York City region or Manhattan region, you can see the cases are going up, and the past 2-week trend has been going up. So, and this is before Memorial Day. So I guess people in New York should keep an eye out what's happening there. But the good news is, again, COVID hospitalizations overall, has been the lowest now. CDC's reported. And the trends overall is going down. So I guess we'll keep an eye out on what's happening in New York. But a couple of papers, again, I'm going to go through this quickly and then turn it over to Jacob. But one paper that I just saw came out today, so maybe not too many people saw it yet, but it's a very short paper. It's like a short paper to the editor, the letter to the editor about the results. But they did an interesting study where they injected the spike protein, just the spike protein for SARS-CoV-2, into healthy mice, and then they had some human data too. And then what they saw is that the cardioparasites in these mice were severely impacted by this, just by spike protein being injected, and then some microvascular damage. What's interesting here is they didn't talk about mitochondria. I know there's a lot of people interested in mitochondria, but what they saw is a lot of inflammatory factors pop up. This is the only figure of the paper. These figures show that the spike protein indeed is in the cardiomyocytes, or cardiac parasites, I should say, sorry. But what's interesting is that when they did their RNA-seq data, should be available somewhere, there's some mitochondrial genes that they didn't talk about mitochondria, but there's some mitochondrial genes that are suppressed. You can see the mitochondrial DNA genes like these guys, and there's other ones. So that's interesting to see what our data has shown previously about the mitochondrial suppression happening all over the heart. They're seeing this with injecting this protein here, but their focus that they did not talk about mitochondria, talked about these inflammatory factors. And then they had some human data from myocardial biopsies they did, and then from the heart too, from COVID patients who had died, and they saw similar findings with their mice, with the spike protein there. So that was really quickly for that. Some long COVID paper, as you know, a couple of weeks, was it now, a month ago almost, we've been starting to we had the meeting we organized with Kashyap Patel. Some of you were there, talking about COVID cancer being specifically a potential risk for COVID-19 infections. This paper came out a couple of days ago, talking it's purely an epidemiological studies from this French group, and they looked at just patient populations, and they looked at the severe COVID patients, and they found a link in severe COVID patients. I underlined some things from this review article from this paper, talking about there's like a 1.3 times higher risk of cancer diagnosis from people who were hospitalized versus not hospitalized. Again, this is purely a correlation study they did on patient data. They get it, so no molecular data is there. But they're seeing some cancers that are prominent, that were actually significantly prominent in people who had severe COVID, were hematological, renal, lung, and colon cancer, which is some of the things we discussed also in our meeting we had a few weeks ago, about a month ago. So this is an interesting article talking about it. Again, no molecular biology in it, just purely looking at patient data and health records. This other long COVID paper came out, or related to long COVID, talking about again, this is no molecular data, but they looked at how potential sleep, how your sleep can potentially have affected people who get long COVID versus people who don't. And they were talking about obviously there's like a sweet spot. They said basically in the summary conclusion of the article that so people who got a certain amount of sleep, which was about 7 hours on a regular basis when they had COVID, if they could have that 7 hours, some people couldn't because of the disruption due to the infection and the illness. Those people tend to have a lot less, a 30% lower risk of developing long COVID due to the sleep cycle that they had. Again, no molecular biology, purely looking at patient data and finding the statistics to match it. And then this other study that came out looking at symptom trajectory up to 2 years. They found basically this is probably not a surprise to anyone here, but it's a Swiss study they did where they looked at vaccinated versus unvaccinated, and they basically said, yeah, if you weren't vaccinated, one out of every 6 unvaccinated people, who came down with COVID, have not returned back to normal even 2 years afterwards. And some of these people, of course, the vaccination wasn't there when they got COVID, so that was the unfortunate part. But nowadays, since the vaccines are available, this nice article to show that another article to reinforce that vaccination can help, not just the acute phase of it, but long COVID part of it too. So that was a real quick some papers. So I want to give Jacob time, but to talk. But just the variants. It looks as we knew XBB.1.5 was the dominant variant for a while, but these two XBB.1.16.1.91 is coming. The wastewater trend, even though New York City area is going up, overall trend in most places nationally is down. So that's a good indication. And like where I live in Middlesex County, around Boston area, we see that once in a while you get these little blips that go up and down. Maybe this is what's happening in New York, but overall they keep going back down. The wastewater itself nationally is showing, the XBB, but you see the 1.19 and the 1.16 here. They're equally coming up as we see. From the CDC tracker, again, XBB.1.5 was dominant back in February, and slowly these two other variants that we first popped up in India and in Asia, they've been popping up here now, and you can see the regions that they're overall coming up prominent. And the overall trends, with hospitalizations and new case reporting, of course, we know is very poor these days due to the lack of surveillance overall. But as that article talked about, saying hospitalizations are down, that's the way to look at it. Not all countries report that, but the countries who do, you see the trends similar to the U.S. That's really brief, quick updates. I don't know if anyone has any questions really quickly.